The stars had always been silent. For 300 years, humanity reached outward into the darkness, building colonies on distant worlds, meeting strange species, and believing that the universe was a place of wonder. On that cold morning in March 2347, the silence ended. Admiral stood on the bridge of the orbital station horizon, watching his displays fill with red warning lights. 4,000 ships had appeared at the edge of the Sol system. They were not human ships. They were not the ships of any species humanity had ever met. They were vast, dark, and they moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. "How many?" asked Captain standing beside him. 4,200, answered quietly. "Each one bigger than anything we have." The transmission came 30 minutes later. It broadcast on every frequency, in every human language, to every screen on Earth and every colony in human space. The face that appeared was not human. It was pale gray, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and a mouth that seemed too wide for its skull. It called itself High Overlord, and it spoke with the calm tone of someone reading a grocery list. "People of Earth, you have been identified as a primitive species occupying resources required by the Dominion. You will surrender all military vessels. You will dissolve your governments. You will submit to genetic classification for labor assignment. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification." The transmission ended. On Earth, billions of people stood frozen. In government halls, leaders shouted at each other. In homes, families held each other and wept. But in the deep command centers beneath the mountains, in the quiet rooms where the real decisions were made, there was only silence. Counselor called an emergency session of the Unified Council within the hour. Representatives from every nation on Earth and every colony gathered through secure channels. The debate was fierce. Some demanded immediate surrender to save lives. Others refused to consider submission under any circumstances. "They will kill us all," one representative shouted. "Look at their fleet. We cannot fight this." "Then we die standing," another answered. Sat quietly, listening to both sides. He was 73 years old and had spent his life believing in peace. Now he faced a choice that would define humanity forever. While the council debated, Dr. Park was escorted to a small shuttle. She was the chief for Earth's diplomatic corps, fluent in 11 alien languages and trained to understand species that thought in ways humans could barely imagine. Her mission was simple: go to the Dominion fleet and negotiate. The Dominion allowed her to board their command ship. She walked through corridors made of black metal, past soldiers of species she had never seen. Some had scales. Some had too many limbs. All of them wore the same expression, the hollow look of beings who had long ago stopped hopping. Emissary met her in a gray room with no windows. He was smaller than High Overlord, with the same 4 eyes but a softer voice. He offered her a seat as if they were discussing trade agreements. "You are here to accept our terms?" he asked. "I am here to understand them," answered carefully. Smiled, though the expression looked wrong on his alien face. "There is nothing to understand. The Dominion has existed for 3,000 years. We have absorbed 12 species into our collective. None have resisted successfully. Your species is young, your technology primitive. Submission is your only logical path." Studied him as he spoke. She noticed the way his hands remained perfectly still, the way his 4 eyes never blinked. This was a being who had delivered this same speech hundreds of times. He expected fear. He expected begging. He expected the desperate offers that all conquered species made. "What happened to the species that resisted?" she asked. "They were eliminated," said simply. "Their worlds were burned. Their names were erased. Resistance is not brave, human, it is foolish." Returned to Earth 6 hours later. She went directly to Admiral's command center and delivered her report in person. "They are not afraid of us," she said. They have never been afraid of anything. In 3,000 years, every species they encountered either surrendered or was destroyed. They do not understand resistance. They see it as a malfunction, like a machine that does not work properly. Nodded slowly. He had served in the military for 40 years. He had trained for wars that never came, prepared for enemies that never arrived. Now, finally, the enemy was here. "Do they know anything about us?" he asked. "About our history?" Shook her head. "They scanned our public broadcasts, our art, our music. They saw what we show the universe, the peaceful version of humanity. They think we are like the others, soft, afraid, willing to trade freedom for survival." "Then they do not know," said quietly. Counselor arrived at the command center that evening. The council had voted. The decision was unanimous. Earth would not respond to the ultimatum, not with words, not with surrender. The 72 hours would pass in silence. "Some will call us foolish," said to the assembled commanders. "They will say we are leading humanity to extinction." "And what do you say?" General Lee asked. Looked at the old soldier with tired eyes. "I say that there are things worse than death. I say that our ancestors did not crawl out of the darkness, survive ice ages and plagues and wars, build civilizations from nothing, just so we could kneel to the first bully who pointed a gun at us." He turned to the window, looking up at the stars where the Dominion fleet waited. "They ordered us to surrender. They will receive our answer soon enough." Far above, High Overlord reviewed the data his ships had collected on humanity. Population, 11 billion. Military vessels, 247. Colonies, 17. Technology level, primitive. Threat assessment, negligible. He approved the attack timeline and went to rest. In 66 hours, Earth would burn, and another species would join the ranks of the forgotten. It had happened before. It would happen again. The universe belonged to the strong, and the Dominion was stronger than anything humanity could imagine. He was certain of this. He was wrong. 48 hours remained on the Dominion's countdown. High Overlord expected panic. He expected desperate transmissions begging for mercy. He expected the humans to break, as every species before them had broken. Instead, he received nothing. The silence confused him. His officers reported that human communications continued normally. People went to work. Children went to school. News broadcasts discussed the weather and local events. It was as if the ultimatum had never been delivered. "They are in denial," Warlord suggested. "Their minds cannot accept what is coming." Accepted this explanation. It made sense. Primitive species often retreated into fantasy when faced with extinction. He ordered his fleet to continue preparations. He did not know what was happening beneath the surface. On Earth, General Lee sat in a bunker 1 kilometer underground. Around him, screens showed data that only 17 people in all of human space were authorized to see. He entered a code that had not been used in 300 years. Protocol Omega was active. Across the planet, things began to move. In the frozen ground of Siberia, massive doors that had been sealed since the 21st century slowly opened. In the deep oceans, submarines that appeared on no official record received encrypted orders. In the mountains of South America, in the deserts of Africa, in the islands of the Pacific, facilities that the public believed were research stations or nature preserves revealed their true purpose. Humanity had not disarmed after the colonial peace accords. They had simply hidden their weapons. They had buried them so deep that even the most advanced alien sensors could not detect them. For 3 centuries, they had smiled at the universe, spoken of peace and cooperation, and quietly prepared for the day when something hungry came to their door. That day had arrived. Admiral gathered his fleet commanders in a secure briefing room aboard Horizon. The room was quiet. Everyone present understood what was happening. "We have 247 military vessels," said. "They have 4,000. In a direct battle, we lose. This is simple mathematics. Captain spoke up. Then we do not fight a direct battle. Nodded, correct. Our ships will not engage the Dominion fleet. They will scatter. Each ship has been assigned a target, one of the 12 Dominion. If Earth falls, our ships will spend the next decade ensuring that the Dominion falls with us. The commanders absorbed this in silence. They understood what it meant. If this plan was activated, none of them would ever see their families again. None of them would ever return home. They would become weapons, nothing more. Questions asked. There were none. In the city of, a mother named walked her daughter to school. The child was 7 years old and did not understand why her mother held her hand so tightly. Mama, are the aliens going to hurt us? Smiled down at her daughter. It was the same smile she always wore, calm and warm and unafraid. No, baby, they are going to try, but they do not know what we are. She dropped her daughter at the school gates and watched her run inside to join her friends. Then walked 2 blocks to a government building that officially processed fishing permits. She showed her identification to a guard who nodded and escorted her to an elevator that went down, not up. Had been a weapons engineer before her daughter was born. Today, she became one again. Dr. Park was sent back to the Dominion fleet for what the aliens believed would be the final negotiation. She was escorted to the same gray room where she had met emissary before. This time, High Overlord himself was present. He was larger than she had expected. His 4 eyes studied her with cold curiosity, like a scientist examining an insect. "You have come to surrender," he said. It was not a question. "I have come to talk," replied. Made a sound that might have been laughter. "Talk is meaningless. Your time expires in 40 hours. Your ships remain in defensive positions. Your leaders have not responded to our demands. What is there to discuss?" Sat in the chair across from him, keeping her posture relaxed. She had been trained to negotiate with alien minds, to find common ground with beings who thought in ways humans could not imagine. But there was no common ground to find. "I want to understand something," she said. "In 3,000 years, has any species ever refused your demands?" His 4 eyes blinked slowly. "Several, they no longer exist." "And you destroyed them completely, every individual, every world." "Every trace," confirmed. "Resistance is a disease. It must be eliminated entirely or it spreads." Nodded as if this made perfect sense. "And in all that time, did any of those species fight back? Did any of them hurt you?" For the first time, something flickered in his expression. It was not fear. This creature had never known fear, but something like uncertainty. "They tried," he said. "They failed." "I see," rose from her seat and walked to the window. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. "Tell me, High Overlord, do you know what a world war is?" Did not respond. "It is when an entire planet fights itself," continued. "We have had 2 of them. In the first, we killed 20 million of our own people. In the second, we killed 70 million. We destroyed entire cities. We invented weapons that could turn whole populations to ash in seconds. We did this to ourselves, to our own families, to our own children." She turned to face him. Her expression had not changed. Her voice remained calm. "And then we kept going. We built better weapons, worse weapons. We created poisons that could kill a world and buried them in the ground like seeds. We are not like the species you have conquered. We did not spend our history reaching for the stars and dreaming of peace. We spent it learning how to kill each other in more efficient ways." Stared at her. His officers stood frozen around the room. "You conquered 12 species because they wanted to live," said softly. "We are different. We have been killing ourselves since we first learned to pick up rocks. Your fleet is powerful. Your weapons are advanced. But ask yourself this. What happens when you fight a species that is not afraid to die? What happens when extinction is not a threat but an option?" She walked toward the door. "You have given us 72 hours to surrender. We have given you that same time to reconsider. Use it wisely." The door closed behind her. High Overlord sat in silence for a long time. Aboard the human shuttle returning to Earth, closed her eyes and tried to slow her heartbeat. Her hands were shaking. She had shown the Dominion nothing but calm confidence, but inside she was terrified. Not of dying, of what humanity might become if this war began. She thought about the weapons buried beneath the Earth, the ships preparing to scatter across the galaxy, the millions of people who were at this very moment saying goodbye to everyone they loved. She thought about what it meant to belong to a species that would choose annihilation over surrender. And she wondered, not for the first time, whether humanity was brave or simply insane. Perhaps there was no difference. 12 hours remained. The Dominion fleet moved closer to Earth, their weapons charged and ready. High Overlord had grown tired of waiting. The humans had not surrendered. They had not begged. They had done nothing but send a single diplomat to speak strange words about ancient wars. It was time to remind them what power looked like. "Move the fleet into attack formation," ordered. "We will destroy their orbital stations first, then their major cities. Leave enough population for labor extraction." Warlord hesitated. He had served the Dominion for 200 years and had led the conquest of 4 species. Something about the humans troubled him, though he could not say what. "High Overlord," he said carefully, "the human diplomat's words were unusual. Should we not investigate further?" His 4 eyes narrowed. She spoke of old wars, primitive conflicts fought with primitive weapons. "We have ships that can crack planets open like eggs. What do their ancient bombs matter to us?" Had no answer. He gave the order to advance. Admiral received the report that the Dominion fleet was moving. He had been expecting it. He had been preparing for it since the moment those 4,000 ships appeared in human space. "All commanders," he said into his communicator, "execute Phase 1. Across the solar system, human ships that had been sitting motionless suddenly came to life. But they did not move toward the Dominion fleet. They scattered outward in every direction, accelerating toward the edges of the system and the hyperspace lanes beyond. On the Dominion command ship, officers shouted in confusion. "They are running. Their fleet is dispersing. Cowards, they flee before the battle begins." High Overlord watched the display with satisfaction. This was more like it. This was how conquered species behaved. They ran, they hid, and eventually they were hunted down and destroyed. "Let them go," he said. "A few hundred ships cannot escape the Dominion. We will find them after Earth is secured." Then a new alert sounded. "High Overlord," a tactical officer said, his voice uncertain. "We are detecting launches from Earth's surface." Launches. The display zoomed in on the planet. From dozens of locations across every continent, objects were rising into space. They were small, barely visible on sensors, and they moved with terrifying speed. Counts demanded. 17,000 High Overlord, and climbing. Silence fell across the bridge. 17,000 launches from a planet that was supposed to have 200 military vessels. 17,000 objects now streaking toward hyperspace entry points, their trajectories spreading across the entire galaxy. Warlord was the first to speak. "They are weapons. They must be weapons." His voice was steady, but something had changed in his eyes. "Where are they going?" The tactical officer worked frantically at his console. When he looked up, his gray face had gone pale. "Their trajectories. High Overlord, each group is aimed at one of our 12. Dr. Park had requested one final meeting with the Dominion leadership. She stood before High Overlord, Warlord, and a dozen senior commanders in the main conference chamber of the command ship. "I told you we were different," she said. His composure had cracked. For the first time in his long existence, he faced something he did not understand. "Those weapons, what are they?" Planet killers answered simply. Each warhead carries enough destructive power to render a world permanently uninhabitable, not conquerable, not damaged, dead, forever. You are bluffing, no primitive species. We developed these weapons 400 years ago, interrupted. We used simpler versions on ourselves in our Second World War. We have spent the centuries since then making them better, more efficient, harder to stop. She activated a holographic display. It showed Earth's history, but not the version the Dominion had seen in their initial scans. This was the other history, the real one. Images flickered past, trenches filled with dead soldiers, cities burning in nuclear fire, mass graves, gas chambers, mushroom clouds rising over ruined landscapes, the systematic horror of what humans had done to other humans throughout their existence. You asked how we could threaten you with ancient weapons, said. You misunderstood. We were not threatening you with our past. We were showing you what we are. We are not a peaceful species that learned violence. We are a violent species that learned peace, and we can unlearn it very quickly. Warlord stepped forward. If you launch those weapons, we will destroy Earth, every city, every human. Your species will cease to exist. Yes, agreed, we know. The room went silent. You accept extinction? Asked. We accept the price of resistance. Your species has conquered others because they valued survival above all else. They knelt because living as slaves was better than dying free. We are not like them. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. If you attack Earth, we will die, all of us, but so will you. Every dominion will be sterilized within 1 year. Your empire of 3,000 years will become ash, not because we want to destroy you, but because we refuse to be conquered. She stepped closer too, close enough to see the uncertainty in his 4 eyes. You have 72 hours to withdraw from our system. If a single Dominion weapon fires upon Earth, this is no longer a war. It is mutual annihilation. We have made peace with this outcome. Have you? Admiral stood on the bridge of horizon, watching the standoff through sensor displays. His fleet was scattered across the galaxy now, each ship moving toward its assigned target. If the signal came, they would spend their remaining fuel on attack runs against Dominion worlds. None of them would survive. None of them expected to. Captain contacted him from the Unyielding, which was currently racing toward the Dominion's second largest. Admiral, she said, if this works, what happens next? Considered the question. If they withdraw, we recall the warheads and the fleet. We pretend this never happened. We go back to being the peaceful species the galaxy believes we are. And if it does not work, then we become what we always were, killers, the most efficient the universe has ever seen. He paused. Try to see it as a compliment, Captain. 3,000 years of conquest, 12 species absorbed, and they have never faced anything like us. We should be proud. His laugh was hollow. I am not sure pride is what I feel, sir. On the Dominion command ship, High Overlord dismissed his officers and stood alone in the conference chamber. The holographic display still showed images of human war. He had conquered species that built great cities, species that created beautiful art, species that worshipped gods and dreamed of peace. He had never encountered anything like this. A species that burned its own cities, that poisoned its own air, that built weapons capable of ending worlds and then kept them hidden, waiting for the day when they would be needed. They were insane. They had to be insane. But insanity did not make them less dangerous. If anything, it made them more so. Thought about his. He thought about the billions of Dominion citizens who lived there, who had never known fear, who believed their empire was eternal and unconquerable. He thought about what would happen if human warheads began falling from the sky. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Dominion faced a simple question. Was Earth worth everything? The standoff entered its second day. Neither side moved. The Dominion fleet held position at the edge of Earth's defensive perimeter. Human warheads continued their journey across the galaxy, silent messengers of potential destruction. The universe held its breath. High Overlord refused to believe the humans were serious. No species truly accepted extinction. It was a bluff. It had to be a bluff. Test them, he ordered. One ship, one target, something meaningless. We will see if they respond. A Dominion gunship broke formation and fired a single plasma burst at an unmanned human satellite orbiting Mars. The satellite exploded in a flash of light and debris. The response came within minutes. Admiral received the report and issued a single command. One warhead, currently traveling toward the Dominion's nearest colony world, changed course. It detonated in empty space, 2,000 kilometers from the planet's surface. The explosion was visible from the ground. Millions of Dominion citizens looked up and saw a second sun bloom in their sky. It lasted only moments, but the message was clear. On the Dominion command ship, Warlord watched the footage in silence. The warhead had been nowhere near populated areas. The humans could have destroyed the colony entirely. Instead, they had chosen precision, control, a warning rather than an attack. They are not bluffing, he said quietly. High Overlord slammed his fist against the display console. One warhead proves nothing. We have planetary shields, defensive systems. We can intercept. 17,000 warheads, High Overlord interrupted, approaching from different vectors. Using hyperspace lanes our sensors cannot fully track. How many can we intercept? 90%, 95%. Even if only 1% get through, that is 170 planet-killing weapons striking our. Had no answer. Captain led a squadron of 12 fighters in what the commanders called a demonstration flight. They encountered a Dominion patrol group twice their size, 24 vessels with superior weapons and shields. The battle lasted 7 minutes. Dominion pilots fought the way they had always fought. They maneuvered for advantage. They protected their own ships. They attacked when the odds favored them and retreated when they did not. It was logical. It was efficient. It had worked for 3,000 years. Human pilots fought differently. Once Wingman took critical damage, he did not eject. He aimed his crippled ship at the nearest Dominion cruiser and accelerated. The explosion took out the cruiser and 2 escort vessels. Another human pilot, her weapons exhausted, rammed her fighter into a Dominion command ship's engine array. A third managed to board a Dominion vessel through a hull breach, killing 11 crew members with a sidearm before being taken down. When the battle ended, 7 human fighters remained. 18 Dominion ships were destroyed. The surviving Dominion pilots returned to the fleet in shock. They had never encountered enemies who seemed to welcome death, enemies who smiled as they died, as long as they took someone with them, enemies who treated their own lives as ammunition. General Lee gave a rare interview to the Galactic press. Alien journalists from neutral species had gathered at the edge of the conflict zone, broadcasting to a universe that watched in fascination. "General," one journalist asked, "the Dominion claims that your species has hidden weapons of mass destruction for 3 centuries. Is this true?" His weathered face showed no emotion. "Yes. But the colonial peace accords required all species to disarm. You lied to the galactic community." "We told the galaxy what it wanted to hear," replied. "We showed them a version of humanity that made them comfortable, the peaceful explorers, the curious scientists, the friendly neighbors." He paused. "That version of us is real, but it is not all of us." "What is the rest?" Look directly at the camera. "The rest is what happens when you threaten our homes, our families, our future. We tried very hard to leave that part of us in the past. We hoped we would never need it again." His voice dropped. "The Dominion has forced us to remember who we are. We are not happy about this. We do not celebrate it, but we will not pretend it is not true." The interview spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had never heard of Earth now knew its name. More importantly, They knew its nature. Dr. Park remained aboard the Dominion command ship as a strange kind of guest. She was not a prisoner exactly, but she was not free to leave. She spent her time walking the corridors, speaking with members of the 12 conquered species who served as crew. They were afraid to talk to her at first. The Dominion punished disobedience harshly, and speaking with the enemy was certainly disobedient, but was patient. She smiled at them. She learned their names. She asked about their homes, their families, their lives before the Dominion came. Slowly, they began to talk. A maintenance worker from a species called told her about his surrender. "We did not fight," he said, his voice full of old shame. "Our leaders said resistance was pointless. They said the Dominion was too strong. So we knelt, and we have been kneeling ever since." "Do you wish you had fought?" asked. There was quiet for a long time. "Every day," he finally said. "Every day for 200 years, we tell ourselves we made the logical choice. We tell ourselves survival matters more than pride. But there is a part of us, a part that will never stop wondering what would have happened if we had been brave enough to say no." Reached out and touched his arm. "It is not too late." "What do you mean?" "The Dominion is afraid," she said softly. "For the first time in 3,000 years, they face an enemy who will not kneel. If we survive this, if humanity shows that resistance is possible, then everything changes. Every species you have described, every world that surrendered, they will see that there is another way." They stared at her. "You would risk your entire species to prove a point." "We would risk our entire species to remain free," smiled sadly. "It is not logical, it is not safe, but it is who we are." That night something extraordinary happened. Messages began to spread through the lower decks of Dominion vessels. Whispers passed between servants, maintenance crews, and the countless conquered beings who kept the fleet running. The humans were not surrendering. The humans were not afraid. The humans had weapons pointed at the Dominion, and they were willing to use them. For the first time in centuries, hope began to stir in hearts that had forgotten what hope felt like. Counselor received a secret transmission from an unexpected source. Warlord had bypassed normal channels to contact him directly. "If the Dominion withdraws," said, his 4 eyes betraying exhaustion, "will humanity pursue us? Will you seek revenge?" Considered the question carefully. "No, we do not want war. We never wanted war. We simply refuse to accept slavery. And if we return, years from now, decades, with a larger fleet and better weapons, then there will be no warning." His voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. "No negotiation, no ultimatums, only fire. We will spend every moment between now and then preparing for your return, and when you come, we will ensure that the Dominion joins the list of extinct empires." Was silent for a long moment. "You are either the bravest species we have ever encountered, or the most insane." "Perhaps both," admitted. "History will decide." The transmission ended. Sat alone in his quarters, staring at the stars. He thought about the 12 species the Dominion had conquered. He thought about how easily they had surrendered, how quickly they had accepted their place as servants. Then he thought about humanity, about a species that buried planet-killing weapons beneath its own cities, about pilots who rammed their ships into enemies rather than retreat, about diplomats who spoke of extinction as if it were simply another option on the table. He did not know if he admired them or feared them. Perhaps both. The final hours of the countdown passed in silence. Across the galaxy, 17,000 warheads continued their journey toward Dominion space. 200 human ships held position near enemy, their crews ready to die. On Earth, 11 billion people waited, some praying, some working, most simply living their lives with the quiet dignity of those who had accepted whatever came next. High Overlord stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching Earth turn slowly in the distance. Such a small world, such a fragile species, he should have been able to crush them without effort. Instead, He was about to do something no Dominion leader had done in 3,000 years. Warlord entered the bridge and stood beside him. Neither spoke for a long moment. "The fleet awaits your orders, High Overlord," finally said. His four eyes remained fixed on the blue and green planet. "If we attack, we win. Earth falls within hours. Their species ends within days." "Yes, High Overlord. But our burn, the rise up, the remember they once had armies. Every species we have conquered sees that resistance is possible, and they all begin to wonder why they ever surrendered." Nodded slowly. "The mathematics are simple. Earth is one planet. We would lose 12. Even if we eliminate humanity completely, the damage to the Dominion would take centuries to repair." Turned to face his warlord. "When did we become so dependent on fear? Our ancestors conquered through strength, through superiority. Now we rule because our subjects believe resistance is impossible. One small species has proven them wrong. Even if we kill every human, the idea survives." "Ideas are more dangerous than weapons," agreed. The silence stretched between them, then spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. "Order the withdrawal." The Dominion fleet turned away from Earth 3 hours before the deadline expired. 4,000 ships that had come to conquer instead retreated into hyperspace, leaving nothing behind but sensor echoes and the memory of their presence. High Overlord broadcast a message to his empire explaining the withdrawal as a strategic reallocation. No one believed it. The truth spread faster than any propaganda could contain it. The Dominion had faced a species that refused to kneel, and the Dominion had blinked. Admiral watched the enemy fleet disappear from his sensors. He did not cheer. He did not smile. He simply sat in his command chair and felt the weight of what humanity had done. Captain contacted him from the Unyielding, which was already reveering course to return home. "Sir, we won. We actually won." "Did we?" asked quietly. "We showed the galaxy what we are capable of. We revealed that beneath our peaceful exterior, we are a species that would burn worlds to remain free. Is that a victory?" Had no answer. "Return to base, Captain. The warheads are being recalled. The fleet is standing down. We go back to pretending we are harmless explorers." Paused. "But we will never forget what we were willing to become, and neither will the universe." Dr. Park was released from the Dominion command ship just before the fleet. Emissary escorted her to the shuttle bay personally. "Your species is remarkable," said as they walked. "In 3,000 years, I have never seen anything like you." Looked at him. The alien diplomat seemed older than when they first met, as if the past 72 hours had aged him decades. "We are not special," she said. "Every species has the capacity for what we did. All the others you conquered, they could have resisted too. They chose not to. And you chose differently. Why?" Considered the question. She thought about human history, about the wars and the suffering and the endless capacity for violence. She thought about the other side too, the art, the music, the love, the moments of transcendent beauty that made all the darkness worthwhile. "Because we have spent our entire existence fighting," she finally answered. "Fighting each other, fighting nature, fighting ourselves. Surrender is not in our nature. We do not know how to kneel. We tried to learn during the peace centuries. We tried to become the gentle species the galaxy wanted us to be. But when you threatened our homes, when you demanded our submission," she shook her head. "The old instincts woke up. The monster in our hearts opened its eyes." Was silent for a long moment. "The monster," he repeated. "You speak of it as if it is separate from you." "It is and it is not. We are capable of great kindness. We build hospitals and schools. We create art that makes people weep with joy. We love our children and our partners and our friends," smiled sadly. "But when someone threatens what we love, we become something else, something ancient and terrible. The Dominion met the gentle version of humanity. If you had attacked, you would have met the other one." She boarded her shuttle without looking back. On Earth, The news of the Dominion's withdrawal sparked celebrations that lasted for days. People danced in the streets. They wept with relief. They held their families and promised never to let go. But in the quiet halls of power, there was no celebration. The leaders who had made the terrible decisions, who had authorized the weapons and the strategies and the willingness to accept extinction, sat alone with their thoughts. Counselor addressed the Unified Council 1 week later. His face was drawn, his voice tired. "We survived," he said, "but we must not forget what we were prepared to do. We aimed weapons at civilian populations. We were ready to kill billions of innocent beings to save ourselves. Some will call this strength. Others will call it madness. I do not know which is correct." He looked around the chamber at the representatives, who had voted unanimously for resistance. "Let us hope we never face such a choice again, and let us work to become the species we pretend to be, the peaceful explorers, the kind neighbors, the builders of beauty. Not because we are weak, but because we have seen the alternative, and it is too terrible to embrace." The galaxy changed in the years that followed. 5 years after Earth's standoff with the Dominion, the rose up. Their rebellion was small at first, a few thousand fighters with stolen weapons, but it grew. Within a decade, the joined them, and then others whose names humanity had never learned. The Dominion did not fall, but it crumbled at the edges. Species that had spent centuries in silence began to remember their own histories, their own cultures, their own pride. They looked at humanity, the small, violent, impossible species that had refused to kneel, and they found the courage to stand. General Lee retired from military service at the age of 78. A reporter asked him what humanity's message to the galaxy was now. He thought about it for a long time before answering. "Leave us alone," he said. "We do not want war, we do not want conquest. We want to explore the stars and meet new friends and build things that will last. But if you come for us, if you threaten our homes and our children and our future, then understand this. We are the species that dropped nuclear weapons on ourselves. Twice. And we survived. Ask yourself what we will do to you if you force us to fight." The reporter nodded and closed her notebook, but there was one more question she had to ask. "Do you think the Dominion will ever return?" Looked up at the sky, where the stars shone cold and distant and full of possibility. "Perhaps," he said, "but if they do, they will not find us unprepared. They will not find us afraid, and they will not find us willing to kneel." He smiled, and for just a moment, the old soldier looked young again. "We never were." In the archives of the Dominion, a single intelligence report gathered dust on a forgotten shelf. It was classified at the highest level, sealed by Warlord himself before his retirement. The report was simple: species, human; Earth, threat assessment, catastrophic; recommendation, permanent non-engagement. At the bottom of the document, had written a personal note in his own hand. "They did not defeat us with superior weapons or larger fleets. They defeated us with something we had never encountered, a species whose fear of submission is greater than their fear of death. They are builders and dreamers and lovers of peace. But beneath their gentle surface sleeps something ancient and terrible, something that wakes when their survival is threatened. Do not threaten them. Do not challenge them. Do not give them a reason to remember what they are. Let them explore their stars and build their art and raise their children in peace. Let them believe they are the gentle species they wish to be. Because if we wake the monster again, it will not sleep until everything burns. And we will burn with it." The stars remained silent, and humanity for now remained at peace. But they never forgot. They never stopped watching. And deep beneath the surface of 1,000 worlds, the weapons slept, waiting for the day when they would be needed again. Humanity hoped that day would never come. But if it did, they would be ready. They had always been ready. That was what made them human.